Superman's legacy. We've all heard the stories. The Man of Steel, the savior of Earth, the symbol of hope and justice. From comic books to blockbuster movies, Superman has been painted as a quintessential hero, the ideal figure of strength, selflessness, and virtue. But what if I told you that the Superman legacy we've come to worship is a lie? You heard that right. What if the truth behind a Man of Steel isn't what we've been led to believe all these years? I know what you're thinking. This sounds like the start of some crazy conspiracy theory. But trust me, by the end of this video, you'll see just how deep this rabbit hole goes, and why the real story of Superman is far more complex than anyone ever told you. Now, I know many of you are already rolling your eyes, thinking I'm about to tear down your childhood hero. That's not what this is about. This isn't some mindless rant. This is about peeling back the layers and challenging the narrative that's been built around one of the most iconic figures in pop culture history. I want you to stay with me on this journey, because we're going to uncover something that has been hidden in plain sight for decades, something that might just make you rethink everything you know about Superman. And I promise you'll be hooked. By the time we're done here, you'll understand why Superman's legacy isn't just a product of good intentions, but a carefully crafted narrative with some serious, hidden motives. Now, let's start by thinking about the image we've all grown up with. What do we see when we think of Superman? A muscular man in a cape, flying through the skies, saving people from danger, standing tall as a beacon of justice. But here's the first problem. That image? It's more of a carefully constructed illusion than the truth. The world of Superman isn't as simple as it seems, and his legacy, well, it's built on some twisted foundations. Over the years, Superman has been sold to us as the ultimate hero. We've been conditioned to believe that his power is synonymous with good, that his strength is a symbol of righteousness. But the question is, what if the truth behind Superman's power is more complex and far darker than we've ever realized? Take a moment and think about the original stories. The man who was raised on Earth by human parents, Kal-El, born on the doomed planet of Krypton, given the gift of unimaginable power, and yet somehow we were supposed to believe that all of that power made him the ultimate paragon of virtue? What if I told you that what we see in the movies, comics, and TV shows is just a small part of a much bigger and more complicated picture? There's a truth lurking beneath the surface, and it might not align with the warm, fuzzy feeling you've always had about Superman. But here's the kicker. Understanding the truth could change how you see every superhero story ever told. As we dig deeper into Superman's mythos, we'll examine the flaws in his legacy that have been swept under the rug for so long. What about the fact that he was a godlike figure, placed above human beings in almost every way? Sure, we love to root for him, but does that power, that overwhelming might, come with a price? And let's not forget the darker elements of Superman's story that have often been overlooked. His relationship with Lois Lane, his moral compass, and how his very existence could be seen as a threat to humanity rather than a blessing. These are all parts of the equation that we've been conditioned to ignore. In this video, we'll strip away the iconic imagery of the cape and the S shield and focus on the true nature of Superman, the man behind the mask. Who is he really, and why has his legacy been misrepresented for so long? The truth behind Superman's power goes far beyond the fantasy of a world in need of saving. There are deeper forces at play, forces that go all the way back to the origins of Superman's creators. What were their intentions when they brought this character to life? Was Superman meant to be a reflection of our aspirations, or was he something more sinister, a tool for shaping the very idea of power and heroism in ways we never truly understood? The story we know might be just a carefully woven fabric of myths, create and seal the uncomfortable truths about the figure we idolize. And no, this isn't some random rant about a fictional character. This is a deep dive into the origins of a legend and the shocking truths that have been hidden from us for generations. Before we go any further, let me tell you exactly what you're going to get out of this video. You're going to understand how Superman's image has been manipulated by powerful forces to maintain a narrative that suits a very specific agenda. You'll see how the very idea of Superman as a symbol of hope was crafted to keep us complacent, to make us accept the status quo and believe in a version of justice that benefits the few. But most importantly, you'll walk away with a new understanding of the character you thought you knew so well. The truth is more complicated than you could ever imagine, and once we uncover it, you'll never look at Superman or any hero quite the same way again. So, if you've been wondering why Superman's legacy feels a bit too perfect, why his stories sometimes seem to gloss over the messy realities of the world, and why his image is so carefully constructed to make us feel safe and hopeful, stick around. In just a few moments, I'll reveal a side of Superman's story that will make you question everything you thought you knew. Trust me, this is going to blow your mind. And as we peel back the layers, one thing will become clear. The Man of Steel has been hiding more than just his true identity all these years. The question is, what's he really hiding and why? Stay with me till the end of this video. You'll want to hear the full truth, because what we uncover will change the way you look at Superman forever. Just don't say I didn't warn you, because what comes next will make you rethink the very foundation of his legacy. I'm glad you're sticking with me on this journey, because now that you're on this path, there's no turning back. As we dive deeper into the Superman myth, we need to take a hard look at the man behind the legend, Kal-El. For decades, we've been told that Superman's origin story is a tale of hope, resilience, and sacrifice. But what if all those elements are nothing more than a cleverly constructed facade, designed to sell us an image of perfection that doesn't hold up under scrutiny? In truth, Superman's rise to power was never as straightforward as we were led to believe. The story of how he became the world's greatest hero is shrouded in contradictions and hidden truths, and it's about time we pulled back the curtain. Let's start with the basics. Superman's birth, on the doomed planet Krypton, was presented to us as the beginning of an extraordinary tale, a child sent away from a dying world to become the savior of another. The idea of a child who narrowly escapes disaster, only to be adopted by loving human parents, is as wholesome as it gets. But when we look at Krypton more closely, we begin to see cracks in this perfect story. Krypton wasn't just a peaceful, technologically advanced planet on the brink of destruction. It was a society that had long abandoned its moral compass. Its leaders, the Kryptonian elite, had grown obsessed with power and immortality, focusing so heavily on science and control that they ignored the planet's inevitable demise. The very nature of their downfall speaks volumes about the darker side of Superman's origin. The planet wasn't destroyed by chance. It was a result of years of reckless disregard for the natural order and the consequences of unchecked ambition. This is where the first layer of the Superman myth begins to unravel. If Krypton's destruction was no accident, what does that say about the people who came from it? And what does it mean for Kal-El, who was raised by a human family on Earth, to bear the legacy of a species that destroyed itself? We've always been told that Krypton was a utopia, a model of intelligence and reason. But if we look closer, we start to see that it was a civilization on the brink of collapse, much like many of the empires throughout human history. Was Krypton truly a paradise? Or was it a society built on delusions of grandeur, unable to confront its own moral decay until it was too late? But let's leave Krypton for a moment and focus on the Earth that Superman was adopted into. Jonathan and Martha Kent, Superman's adoptive parents, raised him in the small town of Smallville, teaching him the values of kindness, compassion, and humility. These values, the very foundation of Superman's identity, seem so pure, so idealistic. But there's a problem with that. You see, Earth isn't as perfect as the Kent family's farm in Kansas. The world Kal-El was sent to was full of corruption, greed, and violence. The same people he was raised to protect were often the ones who would turn on him, fearful of his power, resentful of his difference. Superman's battle wasn't just with villains like Lex Luthor or General Zod. It was with the very people he was meant to save. And it was here, in the tension between his alien heritage and his human upbringing, that the seeds of doubt were planted. Superman's story, as we've been told, is that of a hero who always stands for justice, never wavering, never compromising. But what if that unwavering stance isn't as noble as we've been led to believe? What if it's a reflection of an unshakable belief in his own superiority, a belief rooted in his Kryptonian lineage? After all, Kal-El isn't just another man. He's an alien with godlike powers. His very existence makes him different from everyone else on Earth. And yet, he's always been portrayed as someone who is above the moral complexities that we humans must face. He's the perfect hero because he can do no wrong. His decisions are always just, his actions always noble. But in reality, his perfection makes him blind to the imperfections around him. And the more we dig into his story, the more we realize that his powers might be more of a curse than a gift. Could it be that Superman's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness? This brings us to another major flaw in the Superman myth, the idea of his moral certainty. From the very beginning, we've been told that Superman is guided by an unshakable moral compass. He never questions his purpose or the righteousness of his actions. But this moral clarity is a dangerous thing. What happens when someone with absolute power believes they are always right? What happens when they refuse to acknowledge the gray areas of the world and instead impose their own black and white view of justice on everyone around them? We've seen it time and time again. Superman's strength is so overwhelming that he often uses it to force his vision of the world onto others. Whether it's stopping a criminal, taking down a corrupt government, or battling other powerful beings, Superman doesn't hesitate. But that kind of certainty can be dangerous. It can lead to a disregard for the very freedoms he's sworn to protect. Is this really the type of hero we should be celebrating? As we look deeper into the lives of those around him, the tension becomes even more apparent. Lois Lane, the woman Superman is said to love, is not just a reporter. She's a symbol of everything Kal-El could never truly understand. She's human, complex, and full of contradictions. And in many ways, she represents a part of Superman's life that he can never fully comprehend. The human experience, with all its messiness, imperfections, and emotional depth. But in every story, Lois is reduced to the love interest, the damsel in distress who needs to be saved. The problem is that this oversimplification of Lois' character only underscores a lack of understanding Superman has for the world he inhabits. Despite his strength, his intelligence, and his powers, Superman is still fundamentally disconnected from the people he's trying to save. And then there's Lex Luthor, Superman's arch-nemesis, the man who challenges everything Kal-El stands for. Luthor is often portrayed as a villain, the power-hungry, manipulative genius who seeks to destroy Superman out of jealousy and greed. But what if Luthor isn't the villain we've been led to believe? What if his opposition to Superman is rooted in something more complex? Luthor represents a human side of the story, the side that questions the morality of a godlike figure who sees himself as the ultimate arbiter of justice. Luthor doesn't trust Superman, and for good reason. He sees the dangers of having someone with unlimited power controlling the fate of the world. And in many ways, Luthor's greatest fear isn't that Superman will destroy humanity, but that he'll make decisions for humanity without ever understanding its true nature. As the layers of Superman's legacy begin to peel away, it becomes clear that there's more at play here than just a clash between good and evil. The true story of Superman is one of power, isolation, and the consequences of being too perfect. Kal-El may be the hero of Metropolis, but he's also the embodiment of the dangers of unchecked power, the consequences of thinking that one person can save the world. And as we continue to uncover the truth about Superman's legacy, we begin to see the cracks in the very foundation of his myth. What happens when a hero is no longer perfect? What happens when the man who's supposed to save us is the one who needs saving? But just when you think you have it all figured out, the story takes another unexpected turn. There's still more secrets to uncover, more hidden truths about Superman's past, and more mystery surrounding his true purpose on Earth. And just when we think we're close to finding the answers, the stakes are raised even higher. Stay with me, because what comes next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Superman. The truth is far more complicated than we've been led to believe. And you won't believe what happens next. I'm thrilled you're following this journey. But let me make one thing perfectly clear. We're only just scratching the surface of the truth behind Superman's legacy. The deeper we dive, the more the lies and contradictions begin to spiral out of control. What if I told you that everything you thought you knew about Superman, everything, was part of an elaborate illusion designed to control the very essence of humanity's perception of power? Stick with me, because now we're stepping into the dark side of the legend. The world of Superman is not just one of alien heroes and villainous plots. It's a world of manipulation, deception, and truth buried so deep that even the strongest man on Earth cannot comprehend it. And, my friend, this is where everything begins to unravel. You see, as Superman grows into the iconic symbol we know today, there's a shadow that lurks just beneath the surface of his so-called heroism. From the very beginning, when Kal-El crash-landed in Kansas and was found by the Kents, The world was told he was a beacon of hope, a savior sent from another planet to guide humanity into a new era. But as we've explored so far, the truth is far murkier. What if this wasn't just an accident of fate? What if Superman's arrival on Earth was part of a much larger, far-reaching plan orchestrated by forces far beyond our understanding? We know that Krypton's destruction wasn't a random event. It was engineered, yes, engineered by someone or something. What if the destruction of Kal-El's home planet wasn't just an unforeseen catastrophe, but a deliberate, strategic act that would serve a larger purpose? The more we analyze Superman's history, the more we realize that the Kents may not have been the only ones who took an interest in Kal-El's upbringing. This is where the real intrigue begins, as we dig into the history of the government agencies and secret organizations that have been watching Superman from the very moment he touched down. The truth is, Kal-El's life didn't just unfold as it seemed. There were players pulling strings behind the scenes, and Superman was never as free as we thought. The Kents may have raised him with love, but they were also part of a much bigger scheme, one that linked back to the very people who had a hand in the creation of the man he would eventually become. We're talking about the secret government organizations, the shadowy figures who manipulated the early days of Superman's emergence on Earth. These groups saw potential in Kal-El that the rest of humanity couldn't even begin to fathom. In the beginning, they were fascinated by the idea of a being with powers beyond anything they could comprehend. And this fascination soon turned into obsession. These agencies saw Superman not as a hero to protect the world, but as a tool, one they could control, one they could shape into their idealized version of the future. These organizations had a vested interest in the myth of Superman and his role on Earth. But there's a shocking twist here. They didn't want him to be a hero. They didn't want him to be this unstoppable force for good. They want to control him, to manipulate him, to make him something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As Kal-El grew older and began to discover his powers, the agencies realized that their original plans might not work. This was no mere lab experiment, no artificial creation. Kal-El wasn't just some product they could shape at will. He was a living being with his own ideas, his own sense of morality, and worst of all, his own sense of autonomy. As much as they tried to control him, they couldn't force him to adhere to their rigid rules. And so, they shifted their tactics. They began planting stories in the media, stories about the dangers of Superman's unchecked power. They built up public fear, fueling the notion that Kal-El could become a tyrant, that his powers could one day be used against humanity. They positioned Superman as the ultimate weapon, one that could either save the world or bring about its destruction. And in doing so, they subtly manipulated public perception, twisting the narrative to suit their own purposes. This constant media campaign had a profound effect on Superman. As he grew older, Kal-El began to question everything. Was he truly the hero the world needed? Or was he being groomed for something far more sinister? Was he just a pawn in a larger game, one he couldn't even see? These doubts began to gnaw at him, eroding his once unwavering belief in his mission. And yet, every time he tried to confront these forces, the agencies behind the curtain made sure to remind him of his place in the world. They showed him how easily they could turn the world against him, how quickly they could twist the truth. They knew Superman's weakness, his connection to humanity. The more they painted him as a threat, the more Kal-El started to believe it. And that's when everything changed. Now, let's talk about the darker forces at play. People like Lex Luthor, the infamous nemesis of Superman. We've always known Luthor as a power-hungry businessman, the mastermind who wants to take down Superman for personal gain. But what if there's more to Lex Luthor's vendetta than we've been led to believe? What if his obsession with Superman isn't just about jealousy or a need for control? What if Luthor, in his own twisted way, is trying to stop something far more dangerous? What if he knows the truth about Superman's legacy, the truth that nobody else wants to see? Luthor's mistrust of Superman goes far deeper than mere rivalry. It's a matter of survival. He knows that the agencies watching Superman aren't just interested in him as a potential threat. They see him as the future of Earth, a weapon they can use to reshape the world in their image. But what if Luthor is right? What if Superman, despite his best intentions, is a key to something much darker? The more we explore the hidden history of Superman's existence, the more we see the pieces of a larger puzzle coming together. Kal-El is caught in the middle of a web of lies, betrayal, and manipulation, and he doesn't even realize it. As his powers continue to grow, so do the stakes for everyone involved. The very people who raised him, the very people who trusted him to protect the world, are the ones who've been using him as a pawn all along. And what happens when the pawn finally learns the truth? There's another twist coming, one that will shake Superman to his core. As Kal-El uncovers the secrets surrounding his existence, he begins to question his very purpose. He was told he was meant to save humanity. But what if the truth is far more complicated? What if his existence on Earth isn't about saving people, but about something much more sinister? What if Superman is part of a grand design, a design that stretches back millennia, tied to forces beyond Earth, beyond Krypton? As Kal-El begins to investigate his true origins, he uncovers a disturbing revelation. His arrival on Earth wasn't a random act. It was a culmination of a long-planned strategy designed by beings who have been manipulating the universe for far longer than anyone could have imagined. The truth about Superman's legacy is far darker than anyone realizes. The clock is ticking, and with each passing moment, the stakes grow higher. Kal-El must decide. Will he continue down the path that has been set before him, or will he fight to break free from the strings that have been pulling him all along? One thing is certain. Nothing will ever be the same again, and the world may never see Superman in the same light again, and I'm glad you're still with me. Because now, the layers are peeling back, and we're heading straight for the heart of Superman's greatest mystery, one that's been concealed beneath all the power, all the strength, and all the accolades. What if everything you believed about Superman, the hero, the symbol of hope, the last son of Krypton, is nothing more than an elaborate smokescreen, designed to hide the terrifying truth that his very existence was carefully orchestrated to bring about humanity's downfall? The story we've been told, the one where Superman is Earth's savior, a beacon of light shining against the darkness, isn't the whole picture. In fact, it's far from it. The more Kal-El uncovers, the more he realizes that his arrival wasn't as innocent as it seemed. And as he digs deeper into the truth about his origins, he begins to understand that he is not just a pawn in a much larger game. He is the key to a catastrophic design that goes far beyond Earth, beyond Krypton, and into the very fabric of the universe itself. For years, Kal-El has lived in the shadow of the myth created around him. He has been used as a tool, a symbol to inspire the masses, but also to keep them in check. But now, the truth has come to light. Superman's true purpose wasn't to save humanity. It wasn't to be the hero everyone thought he was. Kal-El was never meant to protect Earth. He was engineered as a weapon designed to reset the universe and bring it under control. The destruction of Krypton, his arrival on Earth, even the adoption by the Kents. It was all part of a plan that stretched across galaxies, guided by ancient forces that saw him as the ultimate solution to a dying cosmos. As Kal-El unravels this truth, the first thing he feels is betrayal. Not just from those he considered allies, but from himself. His whole life, he has struggled to reconcile the immense power he holds with the moral compass he has tried to live by. But now, faced with the revelation of his true purpose, the lines between good and evil begin to blur. How can he remain the hero the world believes him to be when he realizes that he might be the catalyst for its destruction? The agencies that once manipulated him, the shadowy figures who shaped his life from the very beginning, they had always known this day would come. They knew that one day, Kal-El would start asking questions. They knew that eventually, he would begin to see through the veil of lies. And when that moment came, they had a plan in place to either control him or destroy him. But there was a glitch in their calculations. Superman had changed. The man they created was no longer the naive, idealistic figure they could mold. He had grown beyond their expectations, and with that growth came a newfound resolve to fight back. As Kal-El prepares to confront those who have controlled his destiny, he discovers that the truth about his origins is far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. His creators weren't just alien forces from another galaxy. They were part of an ancient race of beings who had been shaping the fate of the universe for millennia. These beings, known as the Architects, had been manipulating civilizations, steering the course of history toward a specific goal. And Kal-El was their final piece, a living weapon that could reset the balance of power in the universe. They needed him to bring about the reclamation, a cataclysmic event that would purge the universe of its perceived flaws, starting with Earth. But there's one final twist. As Kal-El stands on the precipice of this revelation, a new force enters the picture, a figure from his past, someone who had been watching him all along. It's someone he thought was an ally, someone he trusted implicitly. It's Lois Lane. But Lois is no ordinary reporter, and her connection to the architects runs deeper than Kal-El could ever imagine. She, too, was part of the plan, an agent placed in his life to guide him, to be his moral anchor. But the truth is, Lois has been working for the architects all along. She was never just a love interest or the support system. She was a key player, someone who had been manipulating Superman's emotions and actions from the start. The revelation that Lois has been involved with the architects is a crushing blow to Kal-El. He's been betrayed not only by the system that raised him, not only by the people who claimed to love him, but by the very woman he thought he could trust more than anyone else. The betrayal cuts deep, and Kal-El finds himself torn between the truth and the love he thought he understood. Can he continue to fight for a world that has been so thoroughly manipulated? Or is it time to embrace his true purpose and bring about the reclamation? With the truth now in his hands, Kal-El must make the most difficult choice of his life: to destroy the architects and free humanity from their influence, or to follow through with the reclamation, knowing that it could mean the end of Earth as we know it. There's no easy answer, no clear path forward. Every decision Kal-El makes will have consequences, not just for him, but for the entire universe. As he stands at the crossroads of destiny, the weight of his choices threatens to crush him. But in the end, Kal-El does what only he can do. He rejects the architect's plan. He rejects the path laid out for him by forces beyond his control. He embraces his humanity, the very thing that the architects sought to destroy. In an epic showdown, Superman confronts the architects, not with violence, but with the one thing they cannot comprehend: free will. He chooses to sacrifice his powers, to abandon the role he was meant to play. By doing so, he disrupts the reclamation and breaks the cycle of manipulation that has bound him for so long. The architects, unable to fathom his rejection of their plan, are left powerless, defeated by the very thing they sought to control. In the aftermath of the battle, Kal-El returns to Earth, no longer the indestructible hero, but a man. He walks among humanity, no longer as a savior, but as one of them, and in doing so, he realizes the true meaning of his existence. It was never about his powers, his origin, or his place in the universe. It was about his ability to choose love over power, to choose freedom over destiny. The world is left to rebuild, and Superman, now Clark Kent once again, watches over it. He no longer has the weight of the universe on his shoulders. He is free, and as he looks out across the horizon, he understands that true strength comes not from superhuman abilities, but from the choices we make. The legacy of Superman may have been built on lies, but in the end, it was his humanity, his free will, that saved the world. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.